people going on strike for better wages, the church losing its influence amongst younger people. Are we sure this film doesn't take place in the year 2024 and not 1971? Hi, my name is Ryan Lane, and welcome to my review channel. So for today's movie, I will be reviewing The First Omen, directed by Arkasha Stevenson and starring Nell Free, Tawfeek Barhom, Sônia Braga, Ralph Ineson, and Bill Nighy. So, it's 1971, and Rome is going through a bit of a rough patch. Workers are striking for better wages, and the church is losing its influence, especially amongst the younger people. Enter Margaret, played by Nell Free. She's an American nun who, under the guidance of Cardinal Lawrence, played by Bill Nighy, has come to work at an orphanage before she takes her vows or obtains full nun status. I don't know how it's described. I just know that she's one step below full nun status. Anyway, there's a bit of a snafu with that, as it turns out there might be an evil plot involving one of the orphans at the orphanage, Carlita, played by Nicole Sorche, and a possible plot to give birth to the Antichrist. Since, this would be a pretty big bummer for the world and everything, Margaret, decides to go on a quest to figure out what's going on. Is this just a part of her hallucinations? Or is something like sinisterly evil going on in the orphanage? And to do this, she will team up with people like Father Brennan, played by Ralph Ineson, an excommunicated priest seeking to prevent the birth of the Antichrist. So the writing can be a little unsubtle at times, especially if you've seen the original Omen film. There's a lot of very on-the-nose dialogue in the first act, of which you'll go, that probably has a double entendre right there. Like at one point, a priest who meets Margaret at the at a train station, like he literally goes, I've read so much about you, I practically know you. It's like, well, that's not suspicious at all. Fortunately, the writing does compensate for this by giving the audience three-dimensional characters and introducing some mystery and tension involving the Antichrist's birth and the fate of its mother. Because this is a very hard thing to do. Like, I remember with, like, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, there was a lot of complaints. It's like, oh, you already know Snow's going to go evil, so why watch the movie? With this one, it's like, oh, you already know the Antichrist is going to be born. But the film manages to introduce some actually interesting tension amongst who will give birth to the Antichrist and will they survive? Because in The Omen, spoilers, for those who haven't seen a near 50-year-old film. Anyway, in the film, at one point, Robert goes to Rome and he comes across a grave where with a tomb that bears the name Margaret. And it turns out that, they didn't bury a body there, they just buried the body of a dead dog. So from there, I was like, okay, is the person who gives birth, is she going to live? Is she going to die? Is she going to bear some unspeakably horrible fate that is worse than death? So already from there, I was interested from the get-go. So the writing also introduces some tension involving Margaret's hallucinations. Like, again, the film never gives her a diagnosis, but it's clear that she seems to struggle with some type of schizophrenia or just some level of hallucination-based mental health disorder. And the film does a good job of making you wonder, okay, is this actually happening, or is she just in desperate need of some good therapy and sweet, sweet drugs? The film also does a great job with its callbacks, because unlike Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, which is like, hey, remember, you see this thing that you liked from the original movie? We have that too, and it's practically the same. With this film, it's like, the callbacks are, they're not subtle. You will automatically recognize some of them, but the film actually manages to use these nostalgic callbacks to actually advance the story. Plus, there are some actually creative twists on it. Plus, the film has plenty of creative imagery. It doesn't have to rely on the original film, but still, it's like I appreciate that in its callbacks, it actually manages to, be creative. What a concept, I know, right? Plus, the writing also does a good job of drawing parallel to today's world, as its commentary about the church and what it'll do to stay in power is terrifyingly relevant given the evangelical church's elevation of the true Antichrist, Donald Trump, to the White House. So the performances are all well done. Nell, she does a stellar job as Margaret, a nun who struggles with shame, her devotion to God, and her disapproval of the rather authoritarian approach to the orphans under the nun's care at the orphanage. Ralph Ineson, he brings desperation and energy to the role of Father Brennan, an excommunicated priest. And Bill Nighy excels as the caring yet conniving and icky cardinal who wants to save the world, but only if the church gets to save it. So the film does a great job of establishing a moody and terrifying atmosphere. Like, again, the film does unfortunately rely on cheap jump scares, but I mean, some of them do work and some of them are like, the cheap, oh, haha, it's, we faked you out. It's like, come on, movie, you're better than this. Because thankfully the film does contain plenty of just terrifying imagery. Like, the film does a great job of relying on shadows. Like, at one point, there's this one terrifying imagery in the background of a shot where it's like the room, it's all pitch black, but there's something out there in the shadows. You're like, you can barely just make out what it is, and then you get a full view of it, and you're like, nope, go back in the shadows, go back in the shadows. It's like, the film does a really good job with the imagery. Plus, I mean, the set design also is really good, from the satanic birthing center to the underground discos, and just along with the overall 70s period detail, the film does a good job with its imagery. So, though it's not always subtle with its foreshadowing, the First Omen proves to be an impressive prequel nearly 50 years in the making. So with all that in mind, I will be giving the First Omen 4 out of 5 stars. Anyway, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. If you like this review and would like to see more like it, be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. And for today's comment section prompt of the day, what is your favorite Omen movie and why?